Welcome to Advocating for Dads with Jana Jones.
Hello and welcome to Advocating for Dads with experienced family law attorney Jana K. Jones. Jana has been providing father-focused legal services since 2009 and is passionate about fair custody arrangements in North Carolina. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is about creating a positive co-parenting relationship. Jana, thanks for being here. Great to see you.
Hey, Kevin, good to see you too.
So how important is communication in a co-parenting relationship?
It's monumental. Without clear lines of communication, co-parenting is not going to be successful. You've got to work on that. It's not easy. It's not fun, but it's got to be done.
What strategies do you recommend for effective communication?
Yeah. So, a lot of times folks don't really want to talk on the phone anymore because they're not getting along well.
Right.
So reducing things to a writing can be really helpful. I think text message and email are ideal when we're talking about regular communication. Obviously, if there's some sort of emergency with the children, you guys are going to need to be able to pick up the phone. But day-to-day information, how the child is doing, grade, any behavioral issues, things of that nature can be communicated via text or email, ideally. Additionally, there are some apps out there that parents can use. I think it is Our Family Wizard is one, and there are some other ones. Some are paid, some are not, that will allow you to communicate with the other parent in a way where the communication itself can be downloaded and used as exhibits later if necessary in a trial.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. If you're sending an email, maybe you think a little bit before you fire it off too. So if you're talking on the phone, you might be a little more emotional in the moment.
Exactly.
Can you discuss the role of active listening in resolving conflicts between co-parents?
Yeah, so a lot of times when you've got a high conflict relationship and you're trying to co-parent, your first priority is to get your point across. And that's understandable, but in order to be effective co-parents, you're going to have to listen too.
Right.
So the goal should be to listen first, to understand before trying to communicate your position back to the other side. And make sure you're just not misunderstanding what they're saying. Again, because emotions are high, you may assume that somebody meant something a certain way and they didn't even mean it like that. But because you're in your feelings, emotions are high, you're not even hearing exactly what it is that they're trying to communicate with you. So the first thing is to listen to understand.
Yeah, we've all been in that situation where we're, having a discussion that maybe turns a little heated with whether it's a spouse or a child or a parent or a friend. And yeah, you're so focused on what you want to say next that it's hard to be present in the moment. I think there's a line in a movie, do you listen or do you wait to talk? And a lot of times when you're in that situation, you're just kind of waiting to talk.
Exactly.
Yeah. So are you a lawyer or therapist or both?
I am only a lawyer. I did not go to school for any kind of counseling or anything of that nature. And that's a really important note too. I think that a lot of times when people are going through divorce, there is a conversation about counseling and therapy. But sometimes parents are not married and they have children together and the relationship breaks down and now they're co-parenting and the relationship is not going so well. And therapy is going to be important in that situation as well. Mm-hmm. It's extremely vital that clients understand the role of their attorney. So as your attorney, my job is to advocate for what you tell me you want. My job is not to figure out what's in your best interest or what's going to be the ideal scenario for you and your life moving forward. That's not how I'm trained, and that's not what you're hiring me to do. There are professionals out there that can help you work through those emotions and those frustrations that come with the co-parenting process. And you want to utilize all the resources available to you, but understand the role of your attorney.
That's a good way to put it. You're there to advocate for what they want. And I think that's a very good way of putting it and something for people to remember for sure. Obviously, trust is a big issue with any relationship. And when things break down, obviously trust can go kind of by the wayside. What steps can co-parents take to build or rebuild and even maintain that trust in the relationship?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to focus on the children. The reason the relationship broke down might make trust kind of irreparable between the parties,
right?
But hopefully you both trust that you both want what's best for the child or for the children. And if you use that as your polar star with your communication with one another and the decisions you make surrounding decisions about your child, then that should help you focus and kind of push past the emotions that come with the failed relationship.
And kind of in the same breath, transparency is another thing that kind of goes along with trust. How can transparency between co-parents, help their relationship, and also benefit the children?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, the goal is to raise independent, resilient children, right? That should be every parent's goal. And so, to the extent that communication and transparency are in play when you are communicating with the other side, it's just going to be vital, right? Because if you're not communicating, if you're not being transparent with the other party about what a child is going through, or maybe something they've said or an issue they're having, because you're trying to look a certain way to the child or to outsiders, then that's not going to be what's best for the child. So the transparency, communication, kind of checking your ego at the door is going to be the most important thing you can do when you're trying to deal with your child's best interests.
Yeah, checking your ego at the door. That's very interesting too, because obviously emotions are running high during any sort of a divorce or separation. So yeah, that's tough. That's tough when the child's involved as well. Conflicts are inevitable. I mean, it's going to happen, unless it's the most amicable divorce of all time. But what are some constructive ways to address these conflicts, to address these disagreements with your ex?
So I think just first starting with yourself and figuring out what are the biggest conflicts that you guys are having and what can you do on your side of things to try to reduce that conflict. Secondly, like we've talked about a little bit earlier, getting yourself into some therapy or some counseling is going to be important, because whether you are divorcing or you were never married, but you're co-parenting and that relationship you thought was going to last for the foreseeable future is over, that's kind of like a death. And that's going to be hard to deal with emotionally. And if you're going to be your best self and your best parental self, you're going to need to be the best person you can be. And a lot of times that is going to take some sort of therapy to get past some things and to talk through the issues that may stem from way further than even the relationship. We never know sometimes why we do the things that we do, why we are inclined to react the way we react. We're triggered by certain things. And I think therapy can really help bring that out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And again, you're not a therapist, but it's something that, like, to go along with what you're trying to do for your client, get that therapy in there too. Then the person can kind of work on themselves while you help them get what they need from the settlement. Is that hard? Is that difficult for you to kind of walk that line?
No, I'm a pretty straightforward person. So if my client is getting into the realm of things, asking questions, looking for advice that is much more geared to someone who has a background in psychology or counseling, then I'm going to tell my client, that's above my pay grade, honey. I am an attorney. I am here to advocate for what you want and what you're telling me you want. But to figure out truly what you want, you might need to talk to a therapist to talk those things out and understand your motivations and what you're truly trying to get out of the process.
Yeah. Is it difficult to not get emotionally involved, or are you pretty good about making sure that you stay in your lane?
I try to stay in my lane. Getting emotionally involved is not going to be helpful for anybody.
Right.
Nobody hired me to get emotionally involved. Obviously, clients will vent and they will have moments where they need a compassionate and listening ear, and I'm more than happy to be that. But you're not paying me or having me advocate for you to be your therapist or to be your friend. You're advocating, or you're hiring, to advocate for what it is you're telling me you want. In order for me to do the best job at that, I have to stay objective.
Yeah. What role do extended family and friends play in supporting a positive co-parenting relationship?
That can be a pro or a con, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes those family members and friends are adding more fuel to the fire, frankly. And then sometimes they can be really helpful sounding boards and people to vent to and go to for emotional support. So that's kind of specific to the client and their family and friend dynamics as to whether or not it's helpful. So that's why I always recommend therapy, because then you've got a third party neutral who is truly trying to do what's best for you and can be a little bit more objective and help you kind of walk through the different pieces of advice you may be getting from different folks in your life and determining what should and should not be taken under advisement.
Yeah, it can turn into an echo chamber, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
People just tell you what they want to hear, what they think you want to hear.
Exactly. And you need somebody to be honest with you.
That is true too. Like that, you need somebody who's not clouded by love for you, relationship, any sort of a parent. Parents is obviously going to most of the time take your side and maybe just sort of, I don't know, reiterate things that you're already kind of thinking, and they maybe those are more negative things.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do family members get involved in the process, or are they more on the outside?
So it's happened before. Sometimes some of my younger clients, their parents are asking to be involved in the process or be communicated with. It's completely up to my client. If my client tells me, hey, I want my mom or dad on the email thread, or, I'd like to schedule a call and I want my mom or dad with me on the call, it's perfectly fine with me. Obviously, when you're bringing in a third party, that attorney-client privilege isn't there anymore because now we have someone else on the line. But as far as support or to help make decisions, that can sometimes be helpful. I've been fortunate in my case that for the clients who have included, and it's mostly been their parents, their mom or their dad, it's been more of a benefit than a harm when it came to helping them figure out what they really wanted me to advocate for.
You've been doing this, about 15 years? Is that correct?
Yeah, about 15 years. Yeah.
Wow. So you've seen a lot. How does co-parenting differ from what you've seen when the relationship is amicable versus when it's contentious?
So I think the biggest thing is ego, right? When you are amicable with your co-parent, you're just thinking about the child. It's not getting back at anybody about anything. It's not fighting for the sake of fighting. And so you're able to be a whole lot more effective. And I think the child is able to enjoy a relationship with both parents a lot more when you're more amicable. When you're not so amicable, checking your ego at the door, focusing on the child, not trying to do a tit for tat situation is going to be a lot more challenging.
Yeah, you got to kind of separate the divorce from the co-parenting.
Absolutely.
Kind of like the feelings about the divorce and that person from how you feel about the child and raising the child. Obviously, there's some changes can arise, particularly maybe new partners. How can co-parents sort of navigate those types of changes, whether it's that, a new partner, or maybe a relocation or anything like that, while also striving to maintain that positive relationship?
Going back to your early point, transparency is going to be really important, right? If you know that you may get a job promotion that's going to move you, you know that you are getting into a new relationship and it's moved past just maybe the dating, casually phase, it's becoming more serious. Maybe you want to introduce the child or children to this new person. Maybe you're going to start cohabitating with the new person. As proactive as you can be with these types of things, I think that tends to be a better solution than waiting until the last minute or not informing the other person and they find out through other means. I mean, nobody wants to find out that their ex is in a new relationship from their child. That is not the ideal way.
Yeah. I was thinking Instagram. That's way worse.
True. But I mean, you don't want to find out that information after the fact. Your child's met this person and you didn't even know they existed. That can really shake up things and hurt the trust and transparency between co-parents. So you want to be as proactive as you can be in sharing that kind of vital information.
Yeah, I could see wanting to not say anything because you're afraid of rocking the boat if things are going well or something like that. And then, maybe something is said, like you said, by the kid that you weren't expecting them to mention. Have you seen that go south before?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's no easy way to do this, right? You are moving on with your life. Children are constantly evolving and growing. And so there is no perfect way to introduce the other person or talk about relocation or anything that's going to shake up the dynamic between co-parents. But I think that to try to mitigate the damage as much as possible, you want to be transparent. You want to be proactive. You want to think about solutions and how you're going to address certain issues. So if somebody's relocating and the parties have been operating under a joint physical custody arrangement, that's not going to happen, right? Somebody's on the West Coast, somebody's on the East Coast. You can't do joint custody. So someone is going to be a primary care provider and somebody is going to have visitation. And so figuring out how that's going to work best for the child is paramount. And I think it's important to have those kind of conversations and think those things through as you're making decisions as it relates to why you're relocating, maybe for a job, maybe a new relationship. You've got to balance all of that with the child who has become accustomed to a certain schedule. And now things are going to change for them. Yeah,
relocating is interesting because, imagine there's got to be some sort of, decision made together on that, right? Because you can't just leave, right? You got to get that approved.
Well, so I tell folks all the time, the court does not have the power to tell an adult where they can live. The court has the power to say where a child can live. So if you are in a situation where you don't have a custody order in place and you guys have just been operating and co-parenting on your own, and then somebody is going to be relocating and maybe that joint custody arrangement you had previously is not going to be practical anymore, somebody's going to have to file for custody if you guys are not able to determine amongst yourselves how you're going to handle that custody arrangement moving forward. So, if you get the courts involved, the courts are going to say where the child is going to reside, but the court cannot keep an adult from moving somewhere else, at least not in the state of North Carolina.
Okay. Gotcha. That's a good thing to know. What advice would you give to parents who are maybe listening and just beginning their co-parenting journey?
So I would say the first thing is to figure out what it is that you're wanting as it relates to a schedule. That's going to be the most important thing to figure out. Once you know what you want, then you're going to want to talk to that other parent to see how far apart you guys are. I will say in Mecklenburg County, I think the general default for most of the judges starting out is going to be a joint custody arrangement because the court recognizes that the child needs time with both parents and as much time as possible. So if a 50-50 schedule is an option, that's the ideal one to do. Now, for various reasons, that might not be practical. Somebody's work schedule, maybe they travel a lot for work, or maybe they're just not in the position to take a child on a joint custody arrangement schedule. Right. There might be reasons that doesn't work, but that is generally where the court would start.
Okay. When someone comes into your office, what's sort of the first thing you start with? How do you get the ball rolling on it?
Yeah. So once you've booked a consultation and we are in for your consultation, either in person or phone, generally the first thing I want to start with is what's going on. What had you reach out to my office? Because there's typically a tipping point or something major that's happened to make them reach out to an attorney and try to see what kind of help they can get from a legal service provider. So I always want to give people an opportunity to tell me their story so I can understand what's motivating you and what's got you reaching out to us in the first place.
That sounds like an appropriate place to start. Well, thank you for joining us on Advocating for Dads with experienced family law attorney Jana K. Jones. To connect with Jana, head to lawofficeofjkj.com. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review in the comments. Jana, great to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more amazing videos like this one.